Now that Cormac McCarthy has died, who is going to replace him as the greatest living novelist? And first of all, there is no one who is ever going to write like Cormac McCarthy again. And that's what's great. People always ask me, what books are like Cormac McCarthy books? And I always say to them, how many times have you reread Cormac McCarthy's books? The best thing I ever did as a reader and a thinker is to start rereading books a ton. Reading a book one time is like writing a first draft and thinking that you've produced some masterpiece. I just reread The Orchard Keeper 5 times in a month to film 10 hours worth of content for my Cormac McCarthy course. The amount of depth and meaning I pulled out of that McCarthy novel that no one ever reads and people always poo-poo is insane. And so when you transcend just looking for, the adrenaline of a new story, what's going to happen, and start looking deeper, it does make you a better reader, writer, thinker, and speaker. So let's talk about who is going to replace Cormac, though, as the greatest literary fiction author. And before all you guys start commenting names, let's set some guidelines. First of all, they must be a literary fiction author generally. Let's not bring in genre writers. They need to have written at least 5 masterful works. I read over 200 books a year, and there are some great authors out there right now, but they really haven't shown a lot of depth. And to be, a really great novelist, you need to have a wide variety of stories for us to see how good you really are, because it's not easy, but a lot of people have written one really good book. But writing 5 is very hard. Third, your selection cannot be Thomas Pynchon or Stephen King, because Thomas Pynchon may be dead and we don't know. And if you are saying Stephen King, then just get out of here right now, because you have no idea what the hell you were talking about. And if you guys want to see me talk about authors other than Cormac McCarthy, I post daily literature and writing content to my social media accounts. And if you want to help elevate your feed beyond cat videos and girls doing squats, you know where to find me. So our first author of the day, though, that really meets the criteria is, of course, Don DeLillo. And his novels, Libra, Underworld, End Zone, Mautu, and White Noise easily fit the criteria. We can throw a bunch of other of his in there for masterful novels. And the last 25 years of Don DeLillo's career, and even since he wrote Underworld, haven't been, peak novels, but that necessarily doesn't matter. You could say the same about McCarthy's career after Blood Meridian. And obviously, Don DeLillo and Cormac McCarthy have widely different styles, but they both care a lot about writing beautiful and complex prose. And if you guys want a novel to start with, I would recommend for sure Libra, which tracks the life of Lee Harvey Oswald. And it's pretty masterful stuff. And a lot of us obviously have a connection as Americans, not everyone here, but citizens of the Western world, to JFK and the assassination of him. It still haunts us today with conspiracies and whatnot. Next on our list, and this is a wild card pick, everyone, is James Ellroy and his LA Quartet. And you could say, he is a crime writer, but a lot of his work, because it's complexity and it's just distribution in general and the prose, I would for sure consider not genre fiction, because it remains in the realm of something very literary. It just kind of moves into the crime marketing world. And the whole LA Quartet series is some of the greatest there's some of the best American novels of all time. And if you guys have not gone and read the LA Quartet, Black Dahlia, The Big Nowhere, LA Confidential, and White Jazz, and you guys are truly missing out. Because if you like Cormac McCarthy and you're not super locked down and just liking the whole Western thing, but just enjoy great literature in general, then this is your guy. And I guess that's something I should also address here, is that there are a lot of people who don't really read. They like Blood Meridian and a couple other McCarthy novels, maybe a few other people in another few classic authors, and these people probably aren't for you. This whole list isn't probably what you need. Go read Lonesome Dove and a couple other things. I'll make a whole other video on authors who are like McCarthy, but a lot of the writers who write like McCarthy or have stories to McCarthy, if they're alive, are not in the running for greatest writers. Next, we have I know people aren't going to like this one, but I think that Kazuo Ishiguro is for sure one of the more crafty and masterful authors of our time. Once again, maybe some of his more recent novels haven't been that great, but his use of the unreliable narrator his mastery of that is as good as anything McCarthy has ever done, in terms of McCarthy is a master at nature writing and like adding symbols and writing in these epic ways, right? Like he's 10 out of 10 in that category. Well, Ishiguro, in terms of unreliable narrators, is 10 out of 10. He did win the Nobel Prize and he's liked by everyone and he's somewhat a posh author and he's a little bit arrogant. But I'll go on record right now to say that The Remains of the Day and what he does there with a first person POV unreliable narrator is as good as Cormac McCarthy. Does he have as many good novels that live up to that? No. So The Remains of the Day is about a guy who is a butler to a wealthy and powerful British man back in like the 1930s. But the guy is a Nazi sympathizer. But this butler is 100% focused on being a butler, and like all these crazy things are happening around him. People are falling in love with him or having certain opinions of him, but he doesn't care about anybody's doing because he believes in the art of being a butler. And the level of skill it takes to write something that deep is insane. And every single Kashiro Ishiguro novel deals with unreliable narrators. That's his shtick. And Never Let Me Go, Remains of the Day, Clara and the Sun, An Artist of the Floating World, and A Pale View of the Hills are great. There are 5 novels there that are unlike anything anyone has ever written and are at the same quality level of Cormac McCarthy. Like I said, maybe not prose, but in terms of the story and everything else involved, 100%. And a lot of you guys maybe don't know this about me, but I can go just as deep as I can about Cormac as I'm doing with Cormac McCarthy with at least 10 or 15 other people, fiction authors, that is. So even though I maybe seem like a McCarthy bro, I'm really not, because I'm ready to really read and talk about anyone that is good. So next on our list, we have a pick that a lot of people, I think, would say, and that is Mary Lynn Robinson. And Mary Lynn, maybe I should have put her first, but Mary Lynn Robinson is if you're a Cormac McCarthy fan, you will like Mary Lynn Robinson. Marilyn, Mary Lynn, whatever. Everyone's always like, you're pronouncing these names wrong. I mostly read theory, everyone. I don't, I do watch a lot of BookTube and whatnot, but that's actually more of a recent. And I'm like an introvert. And dude, goddamn, the professors I've had in my life. So I, go to school. You're going to school and taking philosophy classes and whatnot, and I take a Nietzsche class. But then the professor's from Germany and is a master of Nietzsche. And he says Nietzsche. And when I say Nietzsche, he says, no, it's Nietzsche. And so then everyone else is, no, it's Nietzsche. And then I'm like, God damn it, who do I trust? And this has happened with like so many different authors where, am I saying it right? No, you're saying it wrong. And so Marilyn Robinson's only released 5 novels. Housekeeping, Gilead, Home, Jack, and what's the other one? Lila. And a couple summers ago when I was in Wyoming, I sat down and binged all of her books. And she's reminiscent of McCarthy because she is a Christian. She writes in a very traditional manner with very elevated and deep prose. Some of her novels are much more character-centric, obviously. And a lot of her novels also take place, or at least some of the stories, take place in the West. They're very reminiscent of McCarthy and have a very similar feel. They aren't taking place in New York City or Los Angeles and have, more of the newer feel to. And now that we're on the kick of female authors, here's someone that could have been. Leslie Marmon Silko and her story, Ceremony, are very McCarthyan. And she wrote this book when she was pretty young. I think she was in her 20s when she got this finished. And it's sad that she didn't continue her career. But someone who followed in her footsteps and has continued her career as a Native American female author is Louise Erdrich. And Louise has got some hot fire when it comes to her novels. Love Medicine is a very well-crafted novel. That is one of the best debut novels by an American author of all time. Her writing that in her 20s, once again, shows her talent. And a lot of these people I don't think had the commitment. I feel weird talking about this video because I don't think anyone gets close to McCarthy. But I don't think she had the commitment to revision necessarily. But she does have a huge library of books. The Love Medicine book, if you guys have ever read it, has 7 more books in the series that focus on different characters. And that's awesome because we got that a little bit with the Border trilogy. But even that was pretty, Cities of the Plain was somewhat discombobulated, in terms of us getting anywhere or learning that much more about the characters. But, when you have someone who writes literary fiction and you have 8 books that are offshoots, you really can explore and enjoy the process and relax into it. So let's go over some people. This is not really fast. It is not George Saunders, no matter what the New Yorker tells you. It is not Jonathan Franzen, no matter what the New York Times is telling you. And it's not Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman hasn't written a real novel since 2005, everyone. Neil Gaiman is everywhere doing everything, but he's a novelist, right? This famous novelist that hasn't written a book that's like a legitimate novel and put himself out there with his own novel in 18 years now. And it's not like he's a McCarthy who's like taking that long. At one point in his career, he was releasing a novel every 2 years. So personally, my favorite living author is Haruki Murakami, and I know I was doing research on what people think of Haruki Murakami in general in regards to him being the greatest living author, and people like really don't like that idea. But of course, his works are translated. Almost every single author I think I just mentioned was an English speaking author, wrote their works originally in English. So we're dealing with a translated Haruki Murakami, first of all. Second of all, Murakami brings a minimalism that is inspired by Hemingway. A lot of his work is not maximalist. McCarthy, even though we like to imagine his novels as being very simple, he adds a ton of maximalism in terms of his use of prose and contrast and crazy vocabulary words. McCarthy gets really sweaty with his works, which is fun, and it makes them fucking amazing because there's like minimalism and maximalism happening all at the same time. But McCarthy really Murakami, oh my God, works very well at adding magic to his novels and adding this other world that isn't there overtly most of the time, but that really captures you. And for people like myself or who are spiritual and whatnot, McCarthy really captures like the essence of life. Like you get like in the Border trilogy. And like I was just saying, a lot it's interesting, like a lot of really good authors like Mishima, McCarthy, Murakami, David Mitchell, like there's all these like M name authors. And Murakami easily has 5 novels that fall that are masterpieces. Norwegian Wood, The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, Kafka on the Shore, Dance Dance Dance, and IQ84 are unlike really anything else that has been written. And I recommend him to everyone. And everyone who I've actually talked about already on this show, I'll eventually be covering at the depth that I've covered Cormac McCarthy at some point in the next couple decades on this channel, or even probably in the next couple years. And Murakami is really at the top of that list, not at the top, but in the top 5 for sure. Another author that for sure isn't the greatest living novelist and like is somewhat disappointing is David Mitchell, because Cloud Atlas, A Thousand Autumns of Jacob DeZoy, Bone Clocks, and even his last book are all good novels. Like they're all ambitious in their own way. But once again, he doesn't seem to have like improved enough in terms of prose and other things of becoming like a really good writer to kind of fall into like the GOAT category. Not even close. Some goobs out there are gonna say Joyce Carol Oates, get the fuck out of here. And honestly, someone I forgot. I can't believe this. I mean, Tom Robbins is one of the best novelists of all time. I mean, his style is so unique because Tom Robbins is the only person that doesn't do the sad boy shit. His characters are always fulfilled in the world. They're not, Billy Parham and Cornelia Suttree, Bobby Western, boo hoo hoo. Like, they are activated individuals who are not playing the suffering artist or the suffering man card that literally 99.9% of novels do. I mean, almost every single novel has to do that, but Robbins figures out how to make it entertaining. Like, he knows, because that's the whole point. Like, you have to make literature about tragedy and, all these problems because it creates tension and creates story. But Robbins can find that tension in the story with like activated characters like doing things, and it's not like superhero bullshit. It's like really awesome. It's literary fiction. I mean, Tom Robbins, that's the genre he writes in, is literary fiction. So I actually really advocate that everybody read a Tom Robbins book. I would recommend Jitterbug Perfume or Still Life with Woodpecker. I have videos on those on my channel. Still Life with Woodpecker is like pretty short. You can finish it in a couple hours. Like literally, if you were here listening to this, go check out that book and you're just gonna laugh. You're gonna be like, "What? Who writes? This is ridiculous." But it's like, wow, this is a totally different style than I can almost guarantee you've ever read. So, who do you think the greatest living novelist is? And if you say Stephen King, we'll just wrap up with Stephen King. I can understand the first third of King's career was very good, but compared to a lot of the authors that we were just talking about, he doesn't even scrape close to them. And I think you could objectively measure that in whatever category you're trying to look at, whether it be prose, storytelling, characterization. And King does have advantages in the sense that he's written a lot of novels. He's written enough and kept a good pace, especially during the drug-fueled era of his career, that eventually, if you write enough, you just have this great body of work. But I think that since he got hit by that van, and he's kind of entered more of the public life, and like his move into that one movie that he shot. Like since that whole era, he's kind of declined and never really ascended like Cormac has. You know, we saw Cormac release No Country for Old Men and The Road at Stephen King's age, and if we go back further, you know, when Cormac was like in his 60s, released the whole Border trilogy, and King doesn't seem to be like evolving and getting better because he's like on in spats on Twitter and whatnot. And Cormac and a lot of these other authors have like just kind of stayed focused on the work. All right, so there will never be another Cormac, but hopefully there'll be someone just as good in the future that we don't know about.